Hello my friends, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 Honor Mode guide. Hope you're all doing well. Today I wanted to show you a bunch of small tricks, tactics, and weird rules interactions that I've discovered. Odd little corner cases in the rules that you can use an edge or just have fun with. These mostly aren't exploits or anything like that, they're just interesting things that you might not know about the game's systems or neat tactics that you might not have experimented with. I spend a lot of time investigating how the game's different systems interact, and of course that's where a lot of powerful builds come from, but not every rules corner case is worth building an entire character around. Nevertheless, they can still be really cool and really fun to play around with, so today I wanted to show you a few of my favorites. Some of these I use regularly during gameplay, and some can't possibly be used in gameplay because they don't do anything positive for you, but they should all be really neat to take a look at. Before I begin, I do want to take a quick moment to say thank you so much to Josh Hobbs for the $20 donation, Tarantula for the $20, and How Hard Can It Be 404 for the incredibly generous €75, as well as the Old Man Mike, Rybiz Nurek, and Deborina Sharina for becoming channel members. Thank you so much, my friends. I really appreciate the support. It really means so much to me. I'm sorry I'm so behind on saying thank you, but I really do appreciate it. Alright, let's dive in and get weird. The first one of these that I'm going to show you is by far the most useful, and it's in fact something that pretty much everyone should know and keep in mind if you are using any character that attacks with weapons. It's actually that broadly applicable. It's especially useful for an Eldritch Knight fighter, so that's what I'm going to use to talk about it today. So we've leveled up Lae'zel as an Eldritch Knight. But basically, there's a bunch of interactions with throwing weapons that can allow you to overcome disarms, use multiple weapon actions in a turn, switch which weapons you're using, apply debuffs and stuff like that, because of the way that throwing weapons work in Baldur's Gate 3. So let me show you what I mean. So there's actually too many cool things that you can do with this for me to cover all of them probably, but I'll try to talk about several of the most important things that you can do with this trick, which of course involves the fact that returning weapons get equipped to your character after you throw them, which effectively lets you spend one attack instead of an action switching weapons, and lets you attack even when you don't have something equipped. There's a couple things that this gives you right away. Firstly, it gives you effective immunity to being disarmed. If you throw the returning pike from your inventory, it shows up back in your hands after you throw it, even if you had nothing in your hands in the first place. So if an enemy disarms you, and you have the returning pike in your inventory, you can make one attack as a thrown weapon attack, and now you have the returning pike equipped to make melee attacks for the rest of the round. If you're a fighter with 3 attacks, that only spends a third of your action instead of more of your action, changing and equipping your weapon. So this, just carrying any returning weapon around gives you effective immunity to most forms of disarm. You can also use this to get access to really powerful weapon actions. A lot of weapons, especially legendary weapons, have unique weapon actions, but even the default weapon actions can be pretty powerful. Nyrolna, for example, has Zephyr Flash and Zephyr Break, which are both pretty good spells to have access to. Any melee character can have access to those spells if they want them, even if you're using a different weapon. When you have, say, Baldur's Giant Slayer equipped, you can throw Nyrolna as one of your attacks, and then activate Zephyr Flash or Zephyr Break, which is now available to your character. So the ability to throw this weapon and then cast those spells is something that any melee character has access to. Zephyr Break in particular is very good and can be pretty powerful to have just as a short rest weapon action when it doesn't require you to change your weapon equipment in any way at all. Just having access to that by carrying Nyrolna around is really helpful. Similarly, the returning pike has access to the brace weapon action, which just costs movement speed. So if you're using this alongside another weapon with the returning property, you can throw the returning pike once, use brace, throw a different weapon, and then gain the benefits of the bonus melee damage for the rest of the round. This is more of a corner case because, of course, it requires throwing 2 weapons and then still making melee attacks, so you're probably only doing it on an action surge turn, and if you're throwing 2 weapons, maybe you're just a throwing character already. So it's more of a corner case than the Nyrolna one, but it is still an interesting interaction. The Dwarven Thrower, also a returning weapon, has some pretty strong weapon actions as well. Backbreaker and Concussive Smash are both very useful. They're not on the level of Zephyr Flash, but keeping the Dwarven Thrower in your inventory to get on-demand prone or on-demand daze can be very, very powerful. Weakening Strike is also pretty good. All three of the Dwarven Throwers actual attacks are pretty good. So even if you're just using this as a melee weapon just for these special actions, by throwing it once, hitting an enemy with it once, and then swapping back to a different weapon, that can be a very powerful option as well. Where this gets really good, though, is on an Eldritch Knight that can bind any weapon, turning it into a returning weapon, and giving you access to that weapon's weapon actions just at the cost of throwing it. Let's say we have the Silver Sword of the Astral Plane. We can use Weapon Bond on it. It then doesn't have to be our equipped weapon, and at any time, we can throw it from our inventory. It won't do that much damage because it's not a thrown weapon, but it will allow us to spend just a third of an action to equip this weapon, and then we have access to the ludicrously powerful Soulbreaker attack, stunning enemies. So this is a great option to just have access to a stun, basically on demand, even if this isn't the weapon that you're normally using. You can also use this to get powerful passive benefits. So let's say we want the initiative bonus from the Halberd of Vigilance. You can equip this before going into combat and keep your actual weapon as your bound weapon. So you get to roll initiative with the +1 bonus from the Halberd of Vigilance, or you can use the Defender's Flail for +1 armor class, for example, and have that passive bonus when you enter combat, and then switch weapons just by throwing the weapon that you actually want to use. This is especially good if you use a weapon that actually has the thrown weapon property, because then you don't even give up any damage. So let's say I was to have Char's Spear of Evening as my bound weapon. We could start combat with the Halberd of Vigilance, gaining the +1 initiative, throw Char's Spear of Evening at an enemy as our first attack, which doesn't lose any damage because it's a weapon with the thrown weapon property, which means that it does the full weapon damage when you throw it, and then have this weapon, which is one of the best weapons in the game to actually attack with, just as our weapon for the rest of the combat. So it gives you a lot of versatility in terms of what weapon you're using. You can also use it to end the turn with a good passive bonus. If you were to bind the Defender's Flail and throw that as your last weapon attack of the turn, you would just have +1 AC on the enemy turns. So it just gives you a lot of versatility if you bind a weapon that's not the one you're actively using most of the time. There's one particular weapon that's especially powerful with this, and that's the Bloodthirst Dagger. Ignore that it's called the Blade of the First Blood here. That's just because I spawned it in this save, and there's an error with the name when you spawn it in. This is the Bloodthirst Dagger. The Bloodthirst Dagger has this incredibly powerful attack where when you hit an enemy with it, enemies receive vulnerability to piercing damage. So if you attack an enemy with the Bloodthirst Dagger, they get vulnerability to piercing damage. So we can attack them with it, throw Nirolna from our inventory, which of course conveniently does piercing damage. So this is an extremely powerful tool that just doubles your damage output. Keep throwing Nirolna until we have only one attack left, which for an Eldritch Knight could be 4 attacks with Nirolna. We swing once with the blade, we attack 4 times with Nirolna, and then with our last attack of the turn, we can throw the blade of the Bloodthirst Dagger, because this inherently has the bound weapon property, so it always has throwing and returning this weapon. So we can throw Bloodthirst as our last attack, re-equipping it, getting ready for next turn. If you have Booming Blade as an Eldritch Knight, which I actually forgot to take when I leveled up this character, but if you have Booming Blade, the first attack can be your Booming Blade attack, also giving you a bonus action attack because you're an Eldritch Knight, and it triggers your bonus action abilities. I'll show you what this looks like in practice as well. So I've just gone ahead and started a fight here to demonstrate. Ignore the chaos. All of my allies in camp here decided to get involved, but we can still demo exactly how this works. So we have the Bloodthirst Dagger equipped. We attack the enemy, and that applies the Exploit Weakness effect, giving them vulnerability to piercing damage. And then I can use any one of my other attacks. We're gonna cause some... I'll use the Returning Pike instead of Nirolna here, just so we avoid blowing everybody up. But we can use my other attacks to throw another returning weapon from our inventory without having to spend an additional action, hit that enemy when they have vulnerability to piercing damage. So you can see that that gets doubled from 12 to 24 normally. And then we can go ahead and keep doing that. And then when we want to switch back to the Bloodthirst Dagger to do the same thing again next turn, we can throw it and re-equip it. Got a critical miss there, but no big deal. And of course, we could make many, many attacks in the interim. So if you're not using the Ballast Armor, this is a great way to just freely apply vulnerability with a throwing character as an Eldritch Knight by swapping between the Bloodthirst Blade and another piercing throwing weapon. On top of that, there's just so many cool things that you can do by switching weapons with an attack instead of a full action. Just because you're doing something in a third the time that it normally takes. Find the Hellfire Great Axe to have easy access to the Hellflame Cleave weapon action, because this is a huge amount of additional damage. Find Falara Louv to use the Shriek ability at will without having to use it as your main weapon that you walk around with all the time. Then it just takes a throw and then you can activate Shriek. So there's all kinds of really cool things that you can do, often with an Eldritch Knight. Often it'll cost you your action surge, because some of the best options require multiple attacks or an actual standard action in order to activate the ability that you're looking for. But there's a tremendous amount of space here to play around, and even if the only thing you use it for is just carrying the returning pike in your inventory to be immune to disarms, this is still an incredibly useful trick to be aware of. Next, let's go from one that's extremely useful to one that's decidedly less so. This is a really funny exploit that involves the game not properly tracking negative numbers. So you'll probably recognize this goofy mask if you watched my Devil Foil Mask party, where the idea is that you trade your mental stats for physical stats. This leads to a pretty funny result. When you have negative wisdom, so if you start with 8 wisdom here, and you cast Healing Word, you're going to get 1d4 minus 1 healing, because normally it gives you 1d4 plus your mental attribute, but if your mental attribute is minus 1, it's going to be 1d4 minus 1. Normally this isn't a problem because it can only go as low as 0, but if you reduce your wisdom below 8, reduce your casting stat below 8, and then cast Healing Word, you can actually get negative healing. So I've set this up already, so we're gonna just go ahead and cancel the respec. Because my character is wearing the Devil Foil Mask here, they have the Infernal Legion passive, reducing their increasing their strength by 1 and reducing their intelligence, wisdom, and charisma by 1 per nearby ally. With 3 other allies nearby wearing it, our wisdom is 5, giving us a minus 3 to our wisdom checks. What this means is that if we cast Healing Word, you can see it does 1d4 minus 3 healing, and so if we roll a 1 or a 2 on the die, we're going to get a negative number. The developers didn't anticipate you doing something this dumb, and so they didn't bother to code in an exception for if you get healing numbers below 0. So when you heal an ally, you're going to actually get plus -1 healing and reduce their health by 1. So we've gotten Lae'zel down from 100 to 99. A couple of interesting things about this. It doesn't count as healing. So you'll notice that Shadowheart here has the Reviving Hands equipped. Lae'zel didn't receive Blade Ward. You only get those buff on heal bonuses if you actually give a creature healing, positive healing numbers. So you won't get the Blade Ward ability, you won't get the Bless ability from the Whispering Promise if you get these negative healing numbers. It also reduces enemy health without aggroing or causing them to get mad at you. So if we were to do it to Volo here, alright, we rolled too high a number. Just had to restore my spell slots real quick, but basically if we do this to Volo here, and he loses hit points, normally if you damage him in camp, he's gonna run away, but since he doesn't know that he took damage, because the game considers that to have just been healing, but a negative number of healing, he doesn't run away. It also won't aggro guards, it won't cause you to have committed a crime if you do it in public. Now, as you can see here, most NPCs, if their health gets reduced below maximum, are going to use the regain hit points. So even if you had tremendous patience to sit there using, like, angelic slumber potions to restore your spell slots and spam this on enemies. Unfortunately, you can't really use it to reduce enemies to 0 or reduce neutral creatures to 0 without aggroing them, because they'll just use the regain hit points. But if you do use one of the stealth tricks that prevents them from doing that, you could do that, but at that point you'd rather just be using stealth archery. You can't use it on Withers. I was curious what would happen, but of course he's an undead, so he can't be healed. So we can't reduce his hit points to 0 with healing. So there isn't, as far as I can tell, really a use case for this ability, but it is really cool that it works. Let me show you a couple other things you can do with it too. So you'll be able to see here that we can do it to a guard without making them mad. So we need to actually roll a negative number. But you see, if you roll a positive number, then it does give them the buffs, of course. And we do it again. So the guard here has just lost health without getting mad. It doesn't count as assault or anything because it's a positive spell effect. If you could get your wisdom down to massively negative numbers somehow without the game triggering the effect that when an attribute hits 0, you die, then that could potentially be an interesting way to assassinate enemies outside of combat, or neutral characters outside of combat. As is, I can't really think of a practical use for this, but it is just kind of fun that the game will let you actually perform negative healing. Next up, another one with weapon actions, which showcases some weird interactions between what the game considers a melee attack and what it doesn't. So I'm going to show you using a particular barbarian subclass, the Elk Barbarian, which gets the Elk Rage, giving you access to Primal Stampede. Primal Stampede is the ability to charge and attack all of the enemies on the way with an unarmed strike. But it also counts as a weapon attack, which means that it takes on the benefits, basically, of a weapon attack and of an unarmed strike at the same time. So it benefits from Tavern Brawler, but it can also benefit from some weapon actions that care specifically about doing melee attacks. Let me show you what I mean. Now, there's several weapon actions in the game that care about making melee attacks, or weapon attacks specifically. In this case, we're going to be looking at the Prepare action from Great Axes. This lets you sacrifice 20 feet of your movement speed, so it doesn't actually cost an action, just some of your move speed that turn, in order to add 6 slashing damage, or your strength bonus in slashing damage, 6 for Karlach with 22 strength in this save, in order to add your strength bonus to slashing damage with attacks with your melee weapon that turn. It does only work for melee weapons, so if I was to activate it here with Prepare, and then drop, here, let's enter turn-based mode before it times out, and then we go ahead and drop the weapon, and then make an unarmed strike against somebody, it's not going to get the extra damage bonus from Prepared because we're not attacking with a melee weapon. So you can't really use this on a monk or anything like that. You can see we've got our normal strength modifier plus our Tavern Brawler modifier, because I've given the character Tavern Brawler in order to demonstrate this. So our damage bonus is 1 for the base melee damage, plus 6 for our strength, plus 6 for the Tavern Brawler bonus strength. But we're not getting the bonus damage from Prepared. But because Elk Barbarian treats the charge as both an unarmed strike and a melee weapon, you can use this with Elk Barbarian. So this is my third try attempting to demo this, but I keep rolling a critical hit, which throws off the numbers. So let's see if Karlach can stop showing off for just a second so we can get this done. So I've gone ahead and started a fight here, and we're going to enter an Elk Rage. Of course, you can't rage outside of combat, so we had to start a combat first. And then this gives us access to Primal Stampede. Primal Stampede says it does 1d4 plus 6 bludgeoning damage, so that's a d4 plus our strength bonus. But it's actually going to be more, it's the attack roll, and it says it just uses a normal attack roll, but we're actually going to get significantly more benefits than it has on paper because this is both an unarmed strike and a weapon attack in some weird ways. So I'm going to go ahead and activate Prepare here, and then we'll use Primal Stampede, hitting a bunch of these enemies. We will not activate Luck of the Far Realms here, and so we've hit 3 things, and you can see that each of them took the damage from Primal Stampede, which was the 1d4 plus strength, and then also took 6 damage from the Prepared action, adding our strength bonus again. It also, the hit roll, you'll notice, is a little odd here. So it's going to use our attack roll, 3 on a 1d20, not great, but we hit anyways because Tavern Brawler is broken. Then it adds our Tavern Brawler hit bonus, but not the damage bonus from Tavern Brawler. It only adds the hit bonus to this attack. But that still means that your Elkhart charge is going to hit very regularly. And it is adding the additional damage bonus from Prepared. So we get sort of half the bonus of Tavern Brawler. We get the bonus of being a weapon action when we use Prepared as well. I've done, if you check out my build guide to the Trampler, you can see that this character can also apply a ton of debuffs and stuff. So getting extra damage basically for free by equipping a battle axe is really powerful when you're playing an Elkhart Barbarian, because this is a free short rest weapon action. It just costs you movement speed, which if you're not using all your movement speed in that turn anyways is fine. And it's going to let you charge across multiple enemies over and over and over again, dealing damage each time, adding the prepared bonus each time, every time you use this attack. And this can add up to a huge amount of AoE damage. So if you're playing an Elkhart Barbarian, using a battle axe to benefit from this weapon action is very powerful. That way, of course, is rotten food. You can find rotten food spread all over the map. It's especially prevalent in Act 1, so you could collect a bunch of this if you wanted to use the Honey Badger aspect of the beast strategy. And when you eat it, it poisons you for 10 turns. Now, this will cause you to gain the poison condition for 10 turns. It doesn't even take an action or bonus action to eat the rotten food. So you get this ability, you get the ability to poison yourself without expending any actions, and by using a consumable, a piece of rotten food, literally completely worthless, that you wouldn't have otherwise used. So this will allow you to enter a rage in combat, or give you a 50% chance to start combat by raging. Obviously, you don't want to be poisoned during combat, so you want to pair this with an antidote so that you can get the 50% chance of raging and then cure the poison at the start of combat, basically spending a bonus action to rage, but without having expended a rage charge. At least that's how I thought it worked. It's actually even better than that, because the game does something very bizarre with raging. You can see here that even though we've ticked over 10 turns poisoned, we haven't raged because we're not in combat. But the game doesn't actually, apparently, for the Honey Badger poison, check if you're in combat. It checks if you're in turn-based mode. So if we enter turn-based mode, it's going to roll here. Now, obviously, it didn't do it there, but let's go ahead and change to the next turn here. And then we get a chance of raging even though we aren't in combat. So as long as we're in turn-based mode, we can rage outside of combat without having expended a rage charge, and this rage will carry through to when we eventually do start a combat. We will still want to remove our poison with an antidote, but being able to, and you can just, keep passing turns before starting combat until the 50% chance triggers. Being able to rage for free without expending a rage charge outside of combat, which is something you can normally never do, you can normally never rage outside of combat, is a really powerful option that gives this character vastly more adventuring durability if you take the Honey Badger Barbarian, and allows your character so you can rage many more times in a day, and you can also potentially rage without even spending an action if it happens on the last turn of the poison tick, and then the poison ticks out on the first turn of the actual combat. So super powerful. I didn't realize that it would let you do this thing where you pass turns before combat starts in order to rage outside of combat, but that's ridiculously strong. And I think I'm going to start taking Honey Badger Barbarian quite a bit and poisoning my characters by eating a rotten banana for infinite rage charges. Obviously a bit of an exploit, but a really cool option to have. And finally, one that's definitely an exploit. I do not recommend you do this actually in-game, because it's very clearly not intended and very broken. But lets us show off a lot of the game's weirder mechanics, and weapon and item interactions, and how you can get some items that you're not supposed to have at all in the game. So we're going to go ahead and cast Conjure Woodland Being. I also need to mention that this is not something that I found myself. I read about it in a comment. I know that Morgana Evelyn did a video on this a while ago. I don't know if she was the one who originated it either, but I just want to make clear that this isn't something I discovered on my own, and give credit where it's due. But basically, when we summon the Conjure Woodland Being, she can summon the Wood Woad, and the Wood Woad has this twisting branch, which says, in the Wood Woad's hand, this common branch becomes magical and deals an additional 3 to 12 bludgeoning damage, 3d4 bludgeoning damage. Now that's pretty clear. It's supposed to just be a normal branch that only works for the Wood Woad, but that's not at all how they've coded it, and in fact, they haven't even coded it such that only the branch does the extra damage. It actually works on way more than just the weapon. Now first, of course, we have to get it off the Wood Woad, so let's go ahead and do that. The easiest way to do that is to drop another club on the ground, so we'll just drop the Club of Hill Giant Strength on the ground, and then we'll select our Wood Woad and have it click on it to equip it. This will actually equip the Club of Hill Giant Strength. Whatever club you use is going to be gone unless you repeat this process, so use one you don't care about. Now, firstly, this is actually kind of fun because it lets us give the Wood Woad 19 strength. That doesn't do anything, but it's kind of neat that we can actually equip the Club of Hill Giant Strength to it and have it benefit from that effect. Next, we need to get the weapon off the Wood Woad. Now that it has something else in the main hand, when we pickpocket it, the twisting branch is something is in its inventory. So let me just do that real quick. All right, so it took me a couple rolls because I didn't give Shadowheart high sleight of hand, but we've successfully stolen the twisting branch here. You'll notice that it keeps the magic club effect. Normally, if you get a twisting branch off a dead Wood Woad or something, then it's a different version of the item that doesn't have this effect. So we can equip it, and now when we hit an enemy, or hit anything, we still get the benefit of the magic club effect. Alright, our chance of hitting that is very low, so let's hit the Dryad here. And you can see we did an extra 3d4 damage with magic club. However, this isn't limited to attacks with the club itself. As long as you have the club equipped, it works on any weapon or on anything that's considered a melee attack at all. So you can have this equipped in your main hand, attack with an offhand weapon, and you'll get the magic club bonus. But where it's really ridiculous is with the Daredevil Gloves, which turns your ranged spell attacks into melee spell attacks. I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. So I've gone ahead and started a combat here, and we're going to use Eldritch Blast with our Daredevil Gloves activated on this Steel Watcher that's adjacent to us. And because we have the Twisting Branch equipped, you know what, let's use Luck of the Far Realms. You can see just how much damage we do. We did additional damage based on the Magic Club passive. Even though this enemy has bludgeoning resistance, you can see we got 3d4 extra bludgeoning damage per beam of the Eldritch Blast. If you were using Scorching Ray, a high-level Scorching Ray with Daredevil proximity, this could be an extra 3d4 on every attack. This is also a light weapon. You can wield 2 in each hand. So we could have one, or you can wield 2 at once. So we could have one equipped in each hand and get an extra 6d4 bludgeoning damage on every beam of Eldritch Blast as long as we make it as a melee attack. Obviously, that's super broken, but it is a weird interaction, and I wanted to show off some of the weirder interactions in the game. This is definitely one of them. The Daredevil Gloves cause a lot of this type of weird bug. The magic Twisting Branch, and also just generally the summon weapons being able to be grabbed by players using these exploits is something that can come up a lot if you want to use those exploits. And because they aren't really intended to be in the hands of the player, they're extraordinarily powerful. So this one's definitely an exploit. Obviously, up to you to use it if you want, but it is extremely powerful. Alright, my friends, I hope that you've enjoyed this look at 5 bizarre rules interactions in Baldur's Gate 3. If you enjoyed this type of video, definitely let me know. I'm still going to be doing more build guides as well. I have a couple coming shortly, but I wanted to try something a little bit different with this video, and I've had some of these in the just in my notes file for a long time, so I really wanted to show them off. As always, of course, if you have enjoyed the video, then feel free to leave a comment and hit like. Let me know if there are any rules interactions, just weird little corner cases that you've discovered as you've been playing through the game. I'm always really interested in that kind of thing. Whether or not it makes an entire build by itself, it's just really fun to know about, and this game has so many complex systems that they can interact in very bizarre ways. Of course, anytime you leave a comment or hit the like button helps me out with the algorithm, no matter what it is, so I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And of course, you can subscribe to my channel for more Baldur's Gate 3 guides and other strategy game analysis. Cheers, folks. I'll catch you next time.